Hi, everybody. Welcome to our session, The Good, the Bad, the SaaS. We're glad you're here. And can everybody in the back hear us? We'll each try our microphones real quick. Check 1.
Check 2.
Check 3. 4.
Check. Cool. All right. Well, our names and pictures are on the screens here and also in the booklet there. So thanks so much for coming to our session today. I am the panelist host. My name is Michael. And I've got some experts in their field here to talk a bit about what they do. And I'm going to ask them some questions, quite informal. And if we have time, I know we started a bit late, we'll take some questions from you as well if time allows for it. So real quick introductions. If you want to introduce yourself, what you do, maybe a quick 1 or 2 sentences on what your company does, and then we'll jump into the questions.
Afternoon, everyone. Yeah, my name's Suzanne Woodside, and I'm client director of a creative studio called Mint. And we deliver brand marketing and user experience solutions to software and tech companies.
My name's McClements, COO of Whitespace. I usually follow that up with I'm technical, honest, like not just management. And we help companies with innovation, which sounds quite fluffy, but that can mean everything from early product development, ideation, to actually building, shipping MVPs. And we also have our own IP, which is currently in use by the UK government, and we're actually bringing that to market as a SaaS-based product near soon, this year, let's say that.
Hi, my name is Tim, and I'm from Scaffold. We are a bespoke software consultancy based down in Lisburn here, and we specialize in web and apps. So I guess our angle coming into this is when we're helping clients build out SaaS products or seeing some of that journey from maybe off-prem, on-prem stuff, bits and pieces like that. So.
Cool. And I'm Michael. I work for a company called 1E. They specialize in technology that helps the hybrid workforce, everyone that's working remotely. They've got the technology that helps the back end of that. So let's get straight into it. SaaS. We probably all have different definitions of what SaaS is. Can we just start with what your definition is of SaaS, Tim?
Okay. I hate the term SaaS. I absolutely despise it. But purely it's because it leaves people a little bit misguided as to what it actually means. We find quite often when you're talking to a customer about SaaS, they just think it's the cloud. And it's clearly not. It's much more than that. So actually the angle even on today as to who can take advantage of SaaS and is SaaS okay for on-prem or not on-prem and all of that entails. I guess for me, my definition of software as a service is if you're using a service that someone else has built and someone else hosts to facilitate your data. So a CRM or something like that is a really good example of a SaaS product. So yeah, that would be me.
How about yourself, Glenn? Would you agree with that definition?
Yeah, but I think I'll talk about it from a bit of a, even though we build SaaS products from a consumer perspective, because I absolutely love SaaS products to use in a day-to-day basis for business operations, for development operations, all the kind of stuff that I don't want to have to deal with and manage. And great, there's other people who can do that for me, so I can focus on my core competency as a business.
Great.
Well, from our clients' perspective, I think for them, SaaS is almost is a different business model. So some of them are moving from more traditional enterprise on-prem systems that are built for organizations rather than people. And when they are transitioning or developing new products in SaaS, it is that different, almost consumption model. The most obvious being that monthly subscriptions, and that's the type of world they want to evolve into. So yes, I agree with all of those. I think there's very different ways that people focus in on that definition.
Yeah, I agree. And I've got a friend who launched an app, and I do a lot of the marketing stuff for it. And the reason why we decided to go SaaS was for the commercial incentive of subscription modeling, so that rather than the one-time pay once download on the App Store, we could have monthly recurring revenue. And it seems to be going really well so far. So it has different variations, different versions, different reasons. All of 3 of you are in the business of building bespoke software, in-house software for clients. What's the risk involved on the security front for those that want to have something like hardware on site in their hands and not worry about maybe what data is going to the cloud or the journey in between? Or anybody with any experience on that?
Yeah, so I think initially we had the internet for a long time before SaaS actually became. A lot of the tools, a lot of the products could have become SaaS much earlier, but there was that fear of actually putting stuff in the cloud, fear be less secure, fear it's going to get hacked. But I think people have gotten over that. An example is GitHub these days. In previous life, we managed stock exchanges, trading systems, really high performance systems, and we were very good at it. But our own Git repo kept on falling over because that wasn't our core competency. But we were scared of actually putting it in the cloud. But even though we could keep all these very complex systems up and running, we resisted putting our source code there in the fear is kind of less secure. But I think everyone's gotten over that. Well, actually, not everyone. Nearly everyone's gotten over putting most of their crown jewels in the cloud. So I think that's the first thing. But there are some people like we work with the UK government quite a bit, who have their own very bespoke security requirements, which is kind of fun. And there's certain large enterprises who are very worried about data sovereignty. And what we're finding more is, for those kind of solutions, SaaS is kind of sneaking in a different way. So that kind of originally had on-prem, then you had cloud, this kind of hybrid solution where you can actually build a product that's SaaS-like, that is self-service. But for those very bespoke clients, or very paranoid clients, you can install that onto their own managed systems. So they own the kind of underlying hardware, but the kind of the application and all the systems up is basically click, install, deploy. So it's kind of interesting that SaaS is even sneaking into those parts that were kind of the last holdouts from a security perspective.
Brilliant. Now, one of the key themes of this session is the service desk, raising support, having tickets. Is there, from a design perspective, any reason to focus on the user experience of someone who's actually going to be trying to self-service or go through a support process in the software that they've acquired or have built themselves?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's for us, even one of the biggest changes that we've seen. So when we're working with the client on user experience, previously that would have been within the app, whereas now that's changed because the user experience really has to extend to incorporate support. That has to be seamless. So really consideration at the very outset. I mean, we never got really involved in support 3-4 years ago, where now that's something that we're actually looking at up front and even making the client aware of how support is positioned, how it's accessed, what is accessed, both before they've even become a customer in some cases, through their different customer journeys, and then if they want to escalate. So we look at the overall architecture, and that's been a big shift that we've noticed, especially in the past 2 or 3 years.
And is there anything that's like a tip or trick around making that first-time user journey seamless or a bit more successful when it comes to someone who's acquired a new product, they've acquired their new software, and now they have to go through the support process? Is there any way to make that streamline with messaging or anything along those lines?
Yeah, and I think consistency is key. So even the finer detail that we will work on terminology. Let's agree what the terminology is and keep that consistent through the application and in all the branding and messaging. Another tactic that we use is at the brand awareness stage, so if you like at that top of the sales funnel, where you're trying to engage your audience, we use the UI to try and start the familiarization of the product or the service at that early stage. So as you try and push them down through that sales funnel and convert them, that they already have a slight sense of familiarity with the service. After that, for me, with self-service, it's all about the detail, and it's about planning all of those assets, understanding what's required, having different channels to suit different users. Some people will prefer more graphical support. Some people will prefer video or knowledge bases. So I think it's making sure that they have access to that variety, but that you try and negate confusion up front so that ideally they don't need that support. That's really the strategy we take to it.
Yeah, I think that first user onboarding flow is very important, and sometimes it's an afterthought, but actually investing quite a lot into that, and the usual UX techniques of iterate, get analytics feedback is very important for that, because that can just reduce your support burden massively if they know how to use the system, basically, up front. And there's also consideration of who that user is, and sometimes that's not the primary user kind of going forward. It's someone who's actually trying out the system. It might not be the day-to-day user, so they might be the person that's actually training other people to kind of use the system. So again, the UX techniques of that, who is that first user, really consider the flow, and you can have very custom onboarding tools, and there's this very mature technology space where you can just, it's very easy to do from a technology perspective, but there's a lot of work to be done in the design and research.
Yeah, just to kind of pick up on that as well, the contextual element of who your user is and what level of support they should have available to them is really important to get right too. So I guess this is nearly the difference in my mind between trying out Zoho or Salesforce or something like that and it's saying, great, let's set up your first customer, let's set up your first company. That's not going to be relevant for every user of that. So for us, I guess a lot of the projects we would work on are enterprise tools that are used internally within the business. So a lot of that really heavily guided onboarding, you actually don't really get because you're already in the context of an organization. They know what they want to use the app for. They're being told, well, this is the data collection app. You install it and use it for this scenario. So it changes a little bit the dynamics of how much information you need to wait and really explain versus maybe an app that you're building to sell a subscription for a home workout product where we need a user to understand how this is helpful for them, how to buy it, how to use it, and how to make sure they're keeping coming back to use it again and again. So very different contexts there from our side.
And picking up on that, you mentioned enterprise customers. Maybe you work with enterprise, maybe you work with startups. Is there a culture shift or a mindset shift between getting people to think about support differently if you've lived only in the enterprise space or now you've moved into a scaled up startup or anything like that?
Definitely. I would say in terms of discipline, the mindset shift is one of the biggest. And we often work with teams and there isn't really complete consensus that self-service is the way forward. There's a nervousness because they feel that they're maybe almost losing direct contact with their customers a bit. So I think that discipline, and then once you've made that decision to go to self-service, you start off with a new product full of enthusiasm. You're going to hit bumps in the road. It could be maybe a user journey just isn't as seamless as it should be, or there's a question mark over functionality, whatever that might be. Before, we would have seen a tendency to just push that forward and almost let support sort that out after the fact. You don't have the luxury with that with self-service. So if you do use that business model, I would say it needs to be embedded as a culture. Because it's not just in the development of the product, it's throughout its life cycle that you have to remain really disciplined and really committed to it for it to work.
I think for that, people, if you're working in enterprise software, a lot of it is terrible, basically. A lot of legacy enterprise systems are terrible, but people are, I've kind of got used to it, but when you do actually put in the effort and the design techniques and consider the users, the kind of stuff that people are used to from using websites outside of their day-to-day life, they do get delight from it. They're actually, we found people, oh, you can just do it, oh, here's help, oh, you can actually use this, it's actually user-friendly. So I think there's no good reason why you can't actually have good enterprise software that's self-service using all the kind of modern UX techniques and user-friendliness that you can expect outside of your work life. It's this kind of lazy engineering that it has been like that.
So how would you guys define self-service? Is it a user portal? Is it bots? Is it live chat? Is it ServiceNow, ticket resolution, docketing system? How would you define self-service?
It's all of the above, right? It's whatever you feel it needs to be for your context. If we're talking about true self-support, well, it's when I can't do something and I'm stuck, I should be able to resolve that without ever needing to raise a ticket. But inevitably, there will be times when you need to raise a ticket, so you need to provide a seamless experience for that too. I remember listening to a podcast where the CEO of Monzo was being interviewed about customer service. And as a challenger bank, they were coming in wanting to excel at that. And there's a metric that banks use as the cost for customer service per customer, per year, whatever else. I can't remember the numbers now, but it was something like the average was like £3 or £4 per year per customer, something like that on support. Monzo's was sitting at about £50. And whenever they got investment in, they had to address that because it wasn't sustainable moving forward. And that's when you've seen a lot of contextual help starting to appear in their app, where they were trying to help customers self-service, self-solve problems more often than not, where the last line of defense is a person. And I guess ultimately that could be live chat, that can be a ticketing system, that can be prompts that appear at the right time with the right message. It can be an error message that just has the right contextual language that helps someone understand, well, actually, I'll just try again in 5 minutes and it might be fine. So all of the above.
Have any of you built a self-service product for anybody?
Yes, we're in the process of that, and it's been fantastic because we've been involved. Now, when I say building it, I should qualify that. We're working on the brand, the marketing, and the user experience, so that front end, not the actual engineering side of it. And it's probably the most comprehensive one that we've done because we're involved in all of those aspects of it. And just picking up on the point that Tim had made, when we were first discussing self-service with them, I think there's almost a bit of panic but it's not a one-size-fits-all. I think that at its very basic level, it's that first customer support is self-service. It doesn't mean that there can't be an escalation process, and so that was something that we sort of talked through in detail with them. And this is the first product that they have done, which will be launching early next year, which is a self-service.
So we have actually helped build a challenger bank for the Australian market, so Monzo for Australia. It's kind of easy description for that. And that was a challenge, building a bank from scratch. And it's kind of interesting, even if there's not a ticket as such, well, visible to the user, there might be at the back end, and there's a spectrum of analytics that you can actually do. So you can hopefully almost nip things in the bud before they become an issue for too many users if you have the proper UX type analytics. So it might not be a hard failure, but it might be something that people are not using as part of the app, or you see that their journey to that is not quite efficient as it could be. So I think you need, even if it's self-service as such, or as opposed to the end user, you still want to be kind of on the ball from how are people using your app, what are people succeeding with, what are people not succeeding with, and raising tickets internally, but all that kind of invisible to the user, and then again the usual thing, monitor, iterate, get feedback.
How about yourself, Tim? Do you guys, I guess you launched your company going 13 years now, do you have your own self-service solution in-house or self-service approach?
Nope. We are a consultancy, so we build whatever everyone else wants, right? I guess the benefit of that is it's a practice skill, right? You get to try different things and experiment different things. You're moving with the times, different technologies, yada, yada, yada. That's all great. The downside is actually all the stuff that is really best practice around the continual iteration, you don't always see on projects. So there's an analogy we have around F1. During the off-season, teams spend millions, hundreds of millions, investing in getting a car to the starting line. And a lot of clients mistakenly feel that once you get to the starting line, that's great. We're there, done, just turn it on and everyone's going to enjoy using this thing. When in reality, there's pain. As soon as you turn it on, you go, oh crap, we didn't think of that. Why are they trying to do that? So for us, actually, the beauty is getting to work with clients over that longer period of time where they get the buy-in to understand, well, what are we going to sit down and reevaluate on based on the log data what errors are we seeing that they shouldn't be seeing? Why are they seeing them? What can we do to make that journey better? Or brand new features that come in along the way. But people often underestimate that undercurrent of things just aren't quite how we want them to be. Let's re-engineer.
Yeah, software's never finished. Like there's always bugs, there's always performance improvements, there's always someone in the design team looking to do something fancy in the front end that the engineers complain about. Well, we do. It's completely that. It's getting the MVP out, and then the users will tell you what they want from the software. Like you can design and research, which is all good, but it's only when the rubber hits the road as such that you'll see how it's used.
Are there any tools or considerations that need to be considered when pushing out a self-service solution or product? What are the foundational things that maybe you're asked about when someone's speaking to you for the first time of, can you help us innovate on this or build this? Is there any sort of tip or trick you would give that is like, you need to start here, you need to think about this first?
Well, I'll talk about from probably a different angle. Because from an operations perspective, you're in the hook to make sure this is running. People do expect, back to my previous point, in that you should be able to run your own software better than people can run it in-house. So the standard's pretty high. So it's like you need to get that kind of operational mindset. It's not just writing software and shipping it. It's how are you going to support this? Like what errors are happening? Is it 24/7 support? Who's going to be on call for when something breaks at that night? So you're an operations team now. It's not just kind of a software. You need to think about that, and it's kind of bringing people along that journey, saying, well, who's in the hook? It's one of our questions is, okay, who's going to wake up? Who's going to answer this? Who's in the hook? Who's going to get shouted at for that? So it can be stressful actually keeping a product up and running, particularly if it's quite complex and it's all seamless to the end users.
Yeah, on the toolset side of things there, I don't think there's one tool for support that is a fix-all, because really support, even though you don't really think of it as such, it's baked into the product from the beginning, right? It's preventing problems from happening, which is good coding practice, it's good delivery practice, it's continuous delivery, it's how do you host it, how do you deploy it, how do you launch it, how do you test it, what's your unit testing like, what's it not like maybe in some cases. So that whole piece really is, well, what is the industry doing that's best practice, and how do we take that on board? So, yeah, start there.
And at Digital Scaffolding, what's your approach to support? Is it passive? Is it active?
Both. Unfortunately, we have some clients who can't justify the cost of proactive maintenance, or don't want to, maybe don't feel it's appropriate. Maybe on some stuff where it's not used as widely as a challenger bank. That's a different ballgame. But for us, the relationships that we're really wanting to foster are the ones where you are able to sit down and proactively engage on the issues that have appeared. There's stuff that we'll catch because we're monitoring the infrastructure and we'll see problems before the client knows about them, and hopefully before the customer's even had a chance to report it and fix it and patch it, and away we go. But even the ability to react that quickly comes back to, well, how is it built? Is it something that you can orchestrate and is deployed maybe to name drop through Kubernetes or something like that, or microservices architecture, and you can quickly patch that little problem that's popped up today? So things like that really come part of that proactive support piece. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Shameless plug. The technology that my company does and other competitor companies do exists to where you can monitor what's happening on the back end. So is your bandwidth lagging at your home on your Wi-Fi network or your coffee shop? Being proactive in that sense to realize that 300 people can't access Chrome across your business. You need to run a patch or something. That's the stuff that helps you to maintain software working that way. How about self-service now? Why do you think it's becoming more prominent, more important than ever?
I mean, I've heard self-service talked about more from a trend perspective years before. I think it's just customer expectation. If you look at the way we live our daily lives, you go on, you do your online grocery shopping, you have self-service tills. So even just that mindset, the autonomy, self-governance of being able to do things yourself, and we're all time. Time is a very valuable resource. So I think on the one hand, people want the autonomy to sign up to something, to start using it in their own time, but also the ability to troubleshoot in the moment. And I think we're getting more confident that we have the knowledge to solve problems ourselves. So I think it is just human behavior, the way we've evolved, especially over the past 18 months. I think even more so that's probably accelerated the whole idea of self-service.
From actually building the provider of the software, it's a win as well because it means your support costs are just much lower. So hopefully it's a make the software easy to use, allow people to solve problems themselves, and actually reduce your support costs. A win-win.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully no one here is Sky customer service, but it seems like the last thing they try to let you do is find their phone number on their website when you're looking for help. And Wi-Fi issue last week, and the self-service option was, well, did you test your speed? Did you do the speed check and everything? Before you can actually get to the phone number, it's almost this expectation that everything should be self-service first. Like, don't talk to us unless you've tried these 4 things. After you tried the 4th thing, have you tried the 5th thing? And then maybe we'll give you the phone number. So there is this sort of, and I also think maybe just the way our culture is going technology-wise, we're becoming so independent when it comes to we want to solve things first. Turn it off and on again. Yes, that didn't work, but then moving into the next side of things. Is there
I just say personally, just from a techie perspective, those really bug me because yes, I'm ringing you because I know there's an issue. Yes, I've tried that. So maybe it's just one of the techie snobbishness there. Yes, I know there's a problem and I can't fix it. It's your problem.
Agreed. Is there anything else, if you were to think of what is currently happening in the industry with self-service, with SaaS, what would you say is the biggest thing that maybe people aren't thinking about right now or get wrong from the outset when they look to maybe consider moving to the cloud or to a hybrid environment or just introducing a self-support, self-service model into the product they want?
Again, this is our experience with the clients that we have is when they move to self-service, I think the dynamics of their team needs to change. So we find that development goes to sales and marketing, goes to support, sort of this line. Whereas I think to have people from those disciplines working together right from the start is really important. And even if you have that amount of people, is to create almost like a transformation team, almost custodians of self-service, because I do think it is an ongoing discipline and it's something that we've noticed just with the clients that we work with.
It's back to my kind of previous point. It's the kind of operations and the kind of modern DevOps techniques that you need to actually bake in from the very start, with the expectation that you'll be running a platform 24/7 with lots of users who are going to be doing weird and interesting things that you haven't thought of. And it's not just throw it over the fence and that's kind of support's problem. It's actually that kind of developer operations approach where you need to kind of bake in how this is going to be operated, how it's going to be, how it's self-service and the flow baked in from the very start.
The scary thing for me is a lot of businesses don't realize they're technology businesses, right? We had someone build a portal for us. It doesn't really work very well. Can you make it better? Sure. Is it important to you? Oh yeah, we can't function without it. Right, okay. So it's actually, for me, the awareness of how important technology is in businesses these days, and everyone kind of wants an app or wants a portal. Don't really know why. Everyone needs it. Our competitor has an app. Can we have one? But actually, they're forgetting about the reason you have something like this in the first place. So the streamlining of process, making efficiencies, reducing your cost of support by allowing customers to self-service. Things like that really are the pillar that you want to build on top of. You need to find someone who can bring the best practice along with you, whether that's from a DevOps level or just from a planning and approach level, a strategy for what you're wanting to achieve. But I guess having that digital champion that's really fundamental and ingrained into a business, that's probably the bit that I would be picking out, because if someone really gets digital, they will understand the expectation level that everyone else has on using their services. Like, I think you had mentioned, Suzanne, there, the expectation changing. The expectations now from 10 years ago are completely different on what people expect to use. So, go ahead.
I think it's a good point in that they don't realize they're a tech company, but I think people are, like, we work with Toyota and GSK, and they're tech companies now because, yeah, everyone's a tech company. So, like, building, I think actually Richard mentioned yesterday, like building a a new product, but it's a probiotic, so like something you ingest. But of course, there's an app for that. So it's like so yeah, you're now a tech company.
All right, last question. Only if you feel comfortable sharing. We're covering the good, the bad, and the SaaS. Has there been a failure that you're willing to share on something that has been
No.
released?
No.
No, everything is amazing, right? Is there anything that was pushed to market or could have been done differently? You know, as you said, iteration is key, but only realized after it was pushed or published or promoted that it could have been done differently, and why?
Yes, there always is, unfortunately. So in our experience, not being an in-house team, getting to work on a product, and there'll be stuff that goes wrong so frequently in scenarios like that, but you can push quickly, so that's okay. That's just a normal day in the office. In our scenario, when we're working on a project for so long, and you go through that planning, execution, launch a bit, get this little bit out there, get feedback, and then do the next bit, and the next bit, and the next bit. What you find more often than not is that the customer's plan for how something was going to be used is wrong, just completely wrong. And off the back of that, there's this massive phase that you go through where everyone thinks it's broken and completely unsuccessful. But in reality, you make the smallest tweak and everyone's delighted again. So, like, stuff that goes wrong, nearly everything when you launch it, the very first day you go, crap, shouldn't have done that. If I'd known you were going to do it that way, we would have done this bit a little bit different. But unfortunately, products kind of become a bit of a Frankenstein as time goes on. So I think that's pain that we all have to live with, unfortunately.
And launch really is, in a way, another start. So I know you look at it as the end of a particular process, but you mentioned it, Glenn, you know, you get your product out there. Where we probably, I think at times, where we've learned is that, for example, with SaaS, with that model, people get fixated with their sign-ups rather than adoption and actually who is using the product. So I think at times we maybe haven't consulted enough with the client on that to make them aware of that fact. Sign-up's really a bit of a lagging metric. You want to see that to promote the workflow. So I think for us that the launch is another start, and we're not always involved regularly after that. Ideally we would be, but yeah, that's probably something that in the past we could have advised better on.
Yeah, totally. I think in enterprise sales in particular, we look at, we've got 1,000 customers. That's awesome. They want to upsell in our SaaS platform, and you go and realize that 20% of them have actually opened the dashboard and done anything, and it's like, oh, it's a shelfware. And then how the adoption is so much better of a statistic to measure than actual purchases in itself. Great. Well, we are up to the time that we are scheduled for. But if you wanted to run over, and if any of you had a question for our panel, I'd be delighted to come out with the microphone and give you a chance to ask them if anyone has a question. Any takers? No? Alrighty. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to our panel and your expertise for sharing this on the good, the bad, the SaaS. And thanks for coming to our session.
Cheers.
Great, thanks, Michael.